Hey, everybody. Thanks for your patience. I know we had a late start today, but we only do the best we can. It's raining and it feels more like a Monday than a Tuesday. So, we're here today to talk about neglect, and I do have a special guest with me again. How are we today? And she's frozen. Is it me or is it you? Let me try again. I think it might be me. I'm not sure. Let me try pulling you back in. How's that?
Can you hear me?
There we go. All right.
There we go. Yeah,
Sorry.
you froze out, and I was like, oh no, what's going on?
It was the same on both ends because you were frozen for me too. So it's today. I'm telling you, it feels like a
It,
Monday and it's Tuesday.
what's in retrograde right now? What's in the microwave?
So today we came to you guys to talk about neglect. Very, very important topic, especially when it comes to mental health. Because it's something that necessarily you don't cause for yourself, but it stems through your entire life unless you take control of it. So let's start with the 4 types of neglect. And I don't know, am I frozen or are you frozen? Because it keeps lagging. I'm wondering if it's me.
I think I was frozen.
We're just messing up today.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful Tuesday. It partially snowed in November, so it's one of those days.
Yeah, like I don't mean to rush anything, but like Merry Christmas, everyone. Okay.
Right. Mary Chrysler.
Merry Chrysler. So to start, we'll get into the 4 types of neglect, which are, but technically I think there's 7, but I like to just go with the 4. And that's physical, medical, educational, and for me, most important, emotional neglect. When it comes to physical neglect, I think we all know the signs when someone is being physically neglected. There's not proper hygiene. There's not being fed properly, brushing teeth. They smell, you can tell they're malnourished. Just not taking care of your needs or somebody else's, and you can visibly see it. That's when you're getting into physical neglect. Then you have your medical, where you're not either taking your meds or giving someone their meds or going to the doctor like you're supposed to or following up on things that you're supposed to for your own medical health or medical well-being. And then you have educational, because these ones are brief. So educational is where you're not giving or providing the education to someone or for yourself that is absolutely necessary to be a working and functioning adult. Last, we have emotional. So, emotional neglect is number one, abusive. Let's start there. But it's not always intentional. The problem is we are creatures of habit and we are creatures of our environment. We do what we know because, our parents used to tell us all the time, do as I say and not as I do. Guess what we actually did? The opposite. So, um, it's a relationship pattern in which an individual's affectional needs are consistently disregarded, ignored, invalidated, or unappreciated by a significant other, which doesn't have to be romantic, just in the general sense. Um, when it comes to children, let's start there with the emotional neglect, because that is most important. A child's perception of neglect is so important because when a child perceives that they're being neglected emotionally, they're twice as likely to develop psychiatric disorders by the age of 15. So we're talking borderline, borderline too, yeah, but mostly bipolar, depression, anxiety, self-image, just a bunch of
OCD.
and OCD. Thank you. There was something I was going to put here and I forget what I was going with that because my brain is scrambled eggs today, I've mentioned earlier. So, also a study by the University of Birmingham showed that children who have experienced child abuse or neglect are 4 times as likely to develop serious mental illnesses like psychosis, schizoaffective disorder, or schizophrenia. Paying attention to your children and not just looking at them, but listening to them, hearing them and acknowledging them when they speak it's the most important part of their development. The attention we give them is what guides them and helps them grow. So when you have a serious pattern of deprivation of those basic physical and developmental or emotional needs, they're not getting that healthy growth and development that they should have. Causes learning disabilities and among a million other things. But it also causes them to question what they're feeling. So, for example, if your parents ever told you, you don't know what tired is. Now you're like, do I know what tired is? Because I thought this was tired. But clearly it's not because mom said I'm not tired and I don't know what tired is. So now you go through the motions of not trusting your own judgment. And that stems off into adult life too. So that's me giving my beginner, spiel, so to speak. But other than, unless you want me to get into the symptoms of emotional neglect, and then, I don't know. Is there anything you want to add before I jump into that? I don't want to take over. So
I think we're both in a brain fog because I was listening and I made a post-it in my head and it went away. But yeah, definitely paying attention to your children can help prevent a lot of neglect feelings, and let's not gaslight our kids.
very important not to gaslight our
Yeah.
kids. Do you want to pull on that?
Oh yeah, like gaslighting your children, right? It can be in the most subtle of ways where you're trying to not like actually gaslight your kids, but you might be trying to just get them to do something, right? And what's a good example that a lot of parents say? Oh, okay. We can't go to Chuck E. Cheese because Chuck E. Cheese is closed. We know dang well Chuck E. Cheese ain't closed. And you're driving right past it. Your kid's looking at Chuck E. Cheese, but it's closed. But it looks pretty open and people are going inside. That's just an example of how we say things to our kids that is like blatantly a lie because we don't feel like doing it today. And it's okay to not want to parent that day. But then you have a confused child thinking Christmas is really on Saturday when it's in the middle of February, but that's because when you decided he was going to do Christmas, which has happened to me as a child. I looked really stupid at school thinking Christmas was in February. But little things like that can really affect your kids. So like a goal for me as a parent is I was like very strict on trying to not do certain things that I realized happened to me as a child that messed me up. Now, my son is odd on his own, and I love it. It's a healthy odd. I'm exploring myself odd, but not so much odd when I was a child, which was like an obsessive compulsive disorder odd from my own neglect issues. So it's good to pay attention to your kids. When my son, like I had to watch him to figure out his type of love so that he didn't feel neglect emotionally. And a lot of that is like sitting on FaceTime with me while I'm trying to work and just being there in silence. Like he doesn't care if I'm muted. It's the fact that he's on the phone with me. Although he doesn't like to be muted, he wants to hear what's going around in my pocket. He wants to just hear and just be a part of my day. So that's a thing for him. He will come up and he will vocalize because I told him I'm not a physically affectionate person because of how I grew up. I had a lot of physical neglect when it comes to that love, right? So hugging and things are out of the normal for me.
Affection.
Yeah. And so I had to talk to my son and be like, hey, whenever you want to hug, just let mommy know. And I made it a point to hug him in the mornings and hug him at night to make sure I'm hugging him. And then I used to actually set an alarm on my phone. Go hug your son.
You know what? My son is the exact opposite because I also did not come from a very overly affectionate family. And my son is the alarm clock. Can I have a hug? You hear it ring from a random. It's like the trolls when the little alarm goes off. You're like, hug time. It's literally like that with my son, and he's just like, can I have a hug? And I'm like, I literally just sat down in the back of the house. Like, and now I'm getting back up and I'm walking back out to the living room.
Give a hug.
Of course, to give a hug. And, sometimes I'm like, you got to wait a few minutes. Like, I just sat down. Sometimes I can be a little selfish in that regard. But it's very important to pay attention to those cues from your child because they're telling you exactly what they need. And if you're not giving them what they need, neglect. So when we neglect our children and their needs, especially emotional, they learn to neglect it for themselves. Because if it's not important to the person that they see as a god, why is it important to them? Why is it important at all? The person that it should matter to the most, it doesn't matter to. Right. So, a big part of an issue with parenting for our generation is our phones. We're spending way too much time worried about our phones and not what's right in front of us, which is our children. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, it's podcasting, but you know what? Like, everybody's got their vice, okay? I'm kidding. But we spend so much time on our phones that we forget that these phones are not what's teaching our children or helping our children develop. These phones are not giving anything beneficial to our children other than screen time so that we get a break. So it's really only beneficial for us. Some symptoms of emotional neglect. This is more for how you feel inside, how you get it for yourself. But let's talk about what it looks like in your children. Acting out. You mentioned that earlier. In school, at home. The wrong kind of attention is better than no attention.
Exactly.
So they will do anything. My son was one of them. He would do anything to get my attention, good or bad, because it was my attention. And that's what he really wanted. So that's when I had to say, hey, bud, your message is lost in your mess. Fix it. But then I had to say, hey, he wouldn't be doing that if I fix it. So, then you turn internally like, well, I need to fix it too. It's something that we work on as parents. We always want to give our children a better life than we had. Whether it was good or bad growing up doesn't matter. That's what anybody would want for their children. That's just a fact. The problem is we're also creatures of habit and we learn from our environment. And there's no guidebook to parenting. So some things that our parents did, such as, and I'll get into it in a second, physical discipline. We just carry that straight on down, not realizing there may be better ways or better options that won't leave our children as broken adults that need to be fixed before they can grow. We don't want our children to have a childhood they have to fix in their adult life or that they have to heal from. We want our children to live happy childhoods. So for me, I grew up in a household where there was physical discipline. Not that that's a problem, to each their own. But when it came to my own child, the first time I put my hands on him, he was so upset by the fact that I put my hands on him that he didn't even remember what he got punished for. And it was in that moment that I had to really sit back and consider what kind of parenting, module I was going to go with here, because that's all I knew. So then I had to come up with other ways, other than throwing these hands. Because, from Philly, these hands are buy one, get one free. That extends to my child. I'm kidding, of course. But you get what I'm saying. That's just how we're programmed and conditioned to parent, not realizing that there's other ways. So I had to sit down and say, that's not the parent I want to be. Did that do anything for me as a child, or did it leave me in fear? We shouldn't fear our parents. We should respect our parents. That's it. That's the problem. We want to instill fear in our children. But that's not really the right way, is it? Our children shouldn't fear the person that's supposed to love them unconditionally. You should want them to love you unconditionally like you love them. When your child fears you, they're no longer on that same level, so to speak. You have anything to add to that?
For me, I chose no physical discipline for my child. I was physically abused by my mother, which she would call it discipline, but dragging your child by their hair is not really discipline. That's abuse. So for me, I just couldn't. I just figure, like you said, it didn't teach me anything about her likes and dislikes. what she wanted me to accomplish, none of that. Everything I can remember, I don't realize, I don't remember anything I ever got in trouble for, but I do remember the bruises, the beatings, you know? And so for me, and I also want to teach my child to be peaceful and nonviolent. And how do you teach a child to be peaceful and nonviolent if you are hitting them? You are
That's right.
then teaching violence. So for me, I chose just physical discipline was not something that I ever saw myself, and I still can't see myself doing. Now, there are times where I'll be joking. I'll be like, I'm going to punch you to the moon, little boy. And he laughs. And that's how you know he don't get hit at home. Because I'll be like, boy, I will pop you. He'd be like, yeah, right. And I'm like, you right. But I will take away your Xbox. That's what I will do.
That's devastating enough.
That's devastating enough. So discipline, like even when it comes to like taking things away, I do check in with my son emotionally. Like today, he was struggling doing his schoolwork in a fashionable time. So I checked in with him. And even little things like that, like as a parent, you want to get mad and you want to just discipline right away. You're not doing your schoolwork. I'm taking away your cell phone. I'm taking away TV, something like that. I always stop first and I want to genuinely check in to see if he needs something from me as a parent. Does he need emotional comfort? First of all, is the schoolwork too hard? It's not too hard. Today, he just didn't feel like it. But I check all my boxes before I go into discipline, because if you're just being an ass to be an ass because you feel like you're 10 and you want to test waters with me, that's when discipline comes in. But if you, and my son and I, we have very open communication about our emotions. So if you need something and you're acting out, let's talk about it. Let's work through it. But if you're just not doing your schoolwork because you don't feel like it, then yes, I'm 1,000% taking your tablet away. Like that's just is what it is, like consequences for our actions. But other than that, I always check in first. And I encourage a lot of my friends who are parents to always check in first before discipline, because it could be a call for help. So
yeah, or just a call for a break that they can't vocalize. You know, they need you to say it's okay to need a break. Sometimes our kids need to hear that. You know, a lot of the trouble I have too with discipline is this phrase right here. You know better. Oof. Now I'm guilty of it too, but that's only if my son actually does know better.
Know better.
A lot of the time, especially like growing up in my case too. You know better. I didn't know better. It was your job to teach me better. Right. This is a learning moment. And instead, I'm being made to feel guilty for something I don't understand, you know?
Right.
And that stems into adult life too. That's the word. That's why there's so many broken adults, because they're constantly invalidated with their feelings. You know, they constantly didn't get the kind of attention they needed, or, you know, the kind of, I don't want to say love, because there is always love there. None of our parents are perfect. Forgiving them is basically part of healing and growing as adults ourselves. Whether or not we actually want to or not, it's irrelevant. Right. We don't do it for them anyway. We do it for us. So, but realizing that there's no guidebook, and that's just how they were conditioned to parent. We just happen to say, like, I don't want to do this like this. This isn't how I want my child to be. You know, I don't want my child to feel like that because I felt like that and that sucked. When you have emotional neglect, it leads to certain symptoms, which is what I'm going to get into here, which is numbing out, a common BPD trait, or being cut off from your feelings. Up until this year, I had no understanding of complex emotions. You had happy, sad, and mad, and that's about it. And, you know, mad meant catch these hands. Like, it wasn't just mad. Right. It was like, you can die now, and I will be on my way. Like, you know, like, or happy was just like ecstatic, you know. There was no depth of emotion, because anytime emotions were tried to be expressed, I had third child syndrome, obviously. No one cared. Nobody listened. So what was the point of continuing to express them? And when you don't express them, you can't figure them out. So beyond that, the next one, feeling like there's something missing, but not being sure what it is, because you never experienced it. For some of us, it's that affection, that coddling, that cuddling. You know, a lot of us did not have that because we're taught to toughen up, suck it up, or there was just other extenuating circumstances that our parents couldn't give us that. It's not always intentional that our parents do these things or hurt us this way, but it happens anyway. So
Right.
next
Yeah,
is
definitely that feeling of something missing reflected so much. And I think I talked to you about it, where it's like now I'm like in this process of like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing. It's this and it's this. And a lot of it for me is words of affirmation, because I had to like literally solve world hunger for my mom to say something nice to me. And then physical affection. Like, again, solve world hunger to get a hug. Like that was the problem. And I was not I was a third child, but like 6 kids. So I feel
middle.
you.
So like middle area.
Yeah, middle. So it was definitely a struggle bus.
Yeah. Because then you're struggling to get noticed. You know,
All
I
the
was
time.
struggling to get heard. You were just struggling to get noticed. So,
Mhm.
the next one
Yep.
is feeling hollow inside. And that's just because when we express how we feel, especially to our parents, people that we look up to as gods in our eyes, as you know, as children,
Mhm.
and they don't give us what we're expecting as far as a reaction,
Right.
that leaves broken expectations, which can leave anybody feeling empty. Because all that, you're like ready, sitting there with a cup ready for it to be poured full of love and affection. And you're just like,
Get that cup out of here.
not even, you're just sitting there because
Mhm.
nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
And you're waiting. And then you just feel empty because you expected something, which, to be fair, we should never expect anything. But as children, we don't know any better.
Children should expect love from their parents and
Right.
not be neglected
Right.
emotionally, physically, mentally.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say, like, as adults, we
Yeah.
know not to have expectations, but as
Mhm.
children, we
Yes,
have those.
children.
It leads to being easily overwhelmed or discouraged. You're not going to keep trying to do the same thing if you're going to keep getting the same result.
Mhm.
That's just a period. So, and then you start getting overwhelmed. That's just a fact. You're overwhelmed by emotions that you don't understand or lack of. You know,
Right.
there's something supposed to be there, but what is it? And, you know, I'm before Google. I don't know about you. Yeah, because we're the same age. Around the same age. We're pre-Google. It's not like we could hop
Yep.
on and be like, I feel like crap. Why? And WebMD be like, you're going to die tomorrow. You know, like we didn't have any of that. You know?
I
So
mean, we did have Ask Jeeves.
Jeeves never gave us any answers. We were looking.
Ever. His algorithm was trash.
Absolute garbage.
You'd be like, yo, I'm sad. He'd be like, you want some pizza? Are you looking for pizza? Pizza?
40
And it's
miles
like
from where you are currently, pizza. Yeah. Jeeves was like,
depression. Oh, so you want candy from Pakistan. Got it.
okay.
We got
it. Wish.com.
Right.
Also with that, it comes with low self-esteem. You don't feel great about yourself if nobody's beefing you up. Parents' job is to make you feel like the best person possible. You're made in, you know, they're your many versions of your parents. A lot of that stems from their own self-confidence issues. But whether or not you feel great, you're supposed to beef your child up like they are the shit, because they are. They're your shit.
Make them feel like they can accomplish the world at their tiny little age. Like they can just go out there and build a rocket to take people to Pluto or something. Like,
yeah,
make them feel that way.
And this was something I had mentioned earlier on my IG live too. When we say I used to have this problem with my niece, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because I constantly beat myself up for it now. And my mom used to tell me and tell me and tell me, and I just, like, she was right, but, like, I'm not going to tell her that, obviously. I'm kidding. My niece would say something, let's say, for example, 2 + 2 is 5. Obviously, it is not. And as a Virgo, I have to be right. And I need to tell you why you are wrong. And I would literally argue with, like, a 8, 9-year-old girl till we're blue in the face about how she is wrong and this is right, and nothing ever got solved. Because guess what? That little girl did not give a fuck what the answer was. What she cared about was that I was listening to her, and that she was expressing something. And even if she was figuring it out for herself because she was wrong, or even if she thought she was right, because she had like an entitled sense, that girl is dangerous, okay? She's much older now, still dangerous to the world. Okay?
Right.
Watch out for that girl, ladies and gentlemen.
And that
she is a firecracker.
That's not always bad, right?
No, it's a definite good thing. Like I'm telling you, that girl is gonna be a force. But I had such a need to be right that I forgot that it wasn't about being right or wrong. It was just about
Right.
listening to her and letting her express it. When we constantly correct our children for something they say, they don't even want to say it anymore. They don't even, because obviously we only care about being right or that they're wrong. Now they're only focused on how wrong they were instead of like just talking in general.
Yep.
So,
And sometimes the stuff that comes out of my child's mouth is utterly ridiculous.
absolutely.
And I'm just like, okay, actively listen. Like sometimes, I'm not even gonna lie, sometimes I space out because my son is full of jibber jabber. But what I do is I listen for key words because he will sit there and he will tell you a story, a made up story, because he loves telling stories. Not like he likes to like do a
Fantasy,
fanfic
like
in his
imagination.
brain. Yeah. So he will tell you a story, and the story might go on for like 5 hours, and he has talked about something different everywhere in between, has not kept his storyline. He's just moved on. And now he's talking about something different, but it's still in the same storyline. So it's kind of the same, but it's not really. So you just got to sit there and be like, and you will walk through the house. You will do the laundry. You will do dishes. You will do all the things. And he is still going. So sometimes for my own mental health, I have to tune it out and listen for keywords and actively listen based on the keywords so I can put the story together because it doesn't make sense anyways. But when I say things back to him, he'll be like, no, Mom, the transformer was from this planet while the dog was from this planet. You're like, okay, got it. So then he goes back to his story about transformers and dogs. And you're just like, great.
But it shows that you were actively listening.
Yes, even though I have no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
I am listening to keywords because he don't remember his story either, so it don't even really matter.
Relatable.
He don't remember what's going on anyways. He's just talking just to talk because he wants to be heard. So
absolutely, he wants to be validated. Yeah. And part of that too, with that, after being easily overwhelmed or discouraged, is low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
We don't listen to our children; they don't listen to themselves. They don't feel worth listening to because we made them feel that way. When we don't listen to them, we're neglecting their needs, and now they're going to neglect their own as a result. Yep. How we talk and act towards our children is how they talk and act towards themselves the rest of their lives. So, important to say. And also pronounced sensitivity to rejection. Mm-hmm. So now any kind of perceived rejection, they will shut down completely. Relatable. Yeah. BPD, baby.
And also, if you don't listen to your kids, again, they don't feel like they're worth listening to, but also they won't speak up if something is happening to them because they won't feel like they will be heard. So that is another driving force. If you want your child to speak up if something's being done wrong to them, make sure that they feel heard because a lot of times they'll go inward and they won't talk about it and you'll never know.
And that becomes especially dangerous when kids start going through puberty. That's when you get those suicide ideations and children committing suicide because they shut down. They're told to just go deal with it in their rooms or by themselves, where their parents should be forefront in that. What's going on? You're acting, you have to notice the signs. Pay attention to your children, especially when they get into teenage years. That's where those signs are. You may just need to pay attention because sometimes kids start shutting inward anyway at that age. You have to be the one to go, pluck, and pull them right out the bedroom.
Right.
Now, what's going on? Even if it's all sass and attitude, at least you're getting sass and attitude.
At least you're getting communication.
That's right. When it comes to teenagers, even negative communication is good communication. Okay. It's important.
Everything might just be the worst ever, but at least they're talking. So.
Right. So, especially when it comes to neglect too, now that we've gone over kind of what happens for children, let's look at how it happens for adults. I'll use myself for an example. I have what's called third child syndrome. I was the youngest of 3. Nobody really listened to me. It happens. And my mom worked a lot. She was a single parent. It's not to villainize anybody. It's just the way it is. Because of that, when something traumatic did happen to me, I didn't say anything. because I didn't think anybody would want to hear it anyway. In my head, all I'm going to be told is suck it up, or that's not that bad, or etc., because that's what I grew up hearing. You don't know what tired is, suck it up, shake it off, that kind of stuff. Or you're being over dramatic. I still hear that to this day. Don't you think you're being a little over dramatic? No, I think you think I'm being over dramatic. I think I'm being just dramatic enough because this is how I feel. But that's a way of invalidating. So when you are invalidated constantly throughout your lifetime as a child or just growing up or even in your adult life, you're no longer going to speak up about things. And that becomes very dangerous when it comes towards your mental wellness, because then you start neglecting your own emotions to yourself. When you speak things out, let's say to a friend, I feel like shit today. And that friend's like, and you can tell they're just like really not listening, but you're really hurting and you're really trying to express it. You're not feeling validated in how you're feeling by the person you're expecting to give you validation. Now, as adults, I said we really shouldn't expect anything, but let's ignore that for this case because it's just an example. Now, you're not paying attention to your own emotions because in that moment, that one person didn't care. Now nobody cares. It's a generalization. And people start to shut down. That's when you start to fall into depression, suicide ideation, and just emotional avoidance in general, which is rampant in our generation.
Right.
So a good way to get past that and to validate your own emotions is to write them down. That's just a tip that I'm putting in here for today. It's always my tip, it seems, to write it the fuck down. My tip for everything is to write it down, okay? Write that shit down. Because even if no one is listening, you are listening to you. And by writing things down, sometimes you realize maybe I was a little bit overdramatic reading back on this, or maybe that is a bit excessive. I don't really feel that strongly about that. You look at things from a different perspective once you look back on it after you wrote it down.
Right.
So, important. What causes emotional neglect in adults? A lot of the time, it's illness, death, divorce, or job loss. Any kind of severe loss or something that seriously affects you. Because when that happens, you're too focused on how crappy that is instead of focusing on how to make yourself feel better about it or change the situation. Then you go straight into neglecting yourself, which is kind of like the end cap here for neglect, which is neglecting ourselves, whether it's intentional or non-intentional. It's an inability due to physical or mental impairments to perform the tasks necessary to care for yourself. I forget where I was going with this. My brain just like literally went, boop, I hit the pause button. So I have that going for me. There we go. The tips for recovering from emotional neglect as an adult. Okay. Sorry. I do have notes. I was just trying to I have a couple on the side, but I was really trying not to use the main notes that I had.
Off the dome.
Right off the dome. But if you were, let's say, neglected as a child, or you realize you've been neglecting yourself as an adult, these are kind of some tips and tricks to recognize and overcome and kind of move past that to give yourself a better future. So to start, learn to be aware of positive and negative emotions when you're feeling them. We spend a lot of time dwelling on negative emotions. We have to dwell on positive ones too, both of them. Not excessively, just enough to recognize, understand them fully, and take accountability for them. Like, this is how I'm actually feeling. You're validating that feeling. If you've been disconnected from your feelings for most of your adult life by, just being uncomfortable for a little while, you tend to look at things and act differently towards yourself. Important. Next is to identify your needs and then take the steps to meet the needs. How many times do we recognize the things we need in our life? often. I need $50,000 yesterday. What steps am I taking to actively get towards that $50,000? Nothing. Most of the time, it's just an example, obviously. Obviously, I need to be some $50,000, but just an example. We have a tendency to express what we need, but not work towards what we need or take the steps to get those needs met. So that's an important trait. Belief is a heavy word that I'm going to throw in here. If you feel as though you don't deserve or you don't believe that you should have your needs met, understand that that's usually just that. It's just a belief. It's not a fact and it's not an actuality. And a lot of the time, it's somebody else's voice telling you that, which can also stem back from your childhood.
Right.
So recognizing that is important too. Be gentle and take good care of yourself. You got to take baby steps. It doesn't happen overnight. A lot of the voices that we speak to ourselves in are not ours. They're not in different languages. They're just different people that have said things to us that we took as a fact that are not. It's a perspective. One of my favorite words. We're back to my favorite word again. I swear I'm getting that tattooed. Just perspective, real big across my back, like a thug tattoo.
Perspective.
Yes. So just remembering, Rome wasn't built in a day, and repairing and rewiring brains that have been in the same habits and behaviors for your entire life is not an easy task, but you have to take the steps to not neglect your own future or yourself or your children. So that's my spiel.
Yeah.
You have anything to add to that?
I would just say, remember to take it day by day.
Yeah.
As I like to say when I'm writing code or helping somebody debug, one line at a time. I guess that only works for people writing code. Code goes in lines, top to bottom. Let me explain it now. So each line has a function, right?
Right. For anybody in recovery, that last message was not for you. Okay. That message was just for people who are doing debugging, because one line at a time, you're past that. So
shit.
Moving on. Trying to make a little joke out of it as somebody who is recovery. But, just trying to
one line of code at a time. There we go. Yeah, because each code has a function and you got to go from like start to finish with the computers, because computers are actually really dumb. They're only as smart as the engineer. And so you got to go one at a time. So when stuff gets stressful, I'm trying not to cuss, but we can cuss on this, right? I was like, when stuff.
I've heard it cursed 4 times already. Yeah.
Okay. I don't even hear curse words anymore. It's like the craziest thing. Like somebody could like be cussing like at like a corporate event and I wouldn't even hear it. I'd be like, yeah, no, I totally understand. It's fuck shit. And they're like, yeah, totally. It's like, but yeah, one line of code at a time. And then also like those voices in your head can be bitches sometimes. I 100% get it. But you got to like fight them with a louder voice of yourself.
That's right.
Because I got those voices all day and they be saying some crazy things. And I'll be like, girl, we is not going to do that. But that's my OCD. I got, with OCD, I get a little,
it's fine.
Yeah. It's real bad. I'd be like, oh my God. Oh my God. I scare myself. I'm like, oh my God, stop.
Hey, that means you're listening. So
I'm
validation.
Myself. Yep, there you go. But I still scare myself. So, and a lot of like my OCD came from my neglect, right? So one of the things that I do is I obsessively make sure my son has eaten. And I have to like not try to like put a funnel down his throat and shove food down his throat, because he's going to tell me when he's hungry, because he can speak. He can tell me his needs. And I'm over here like, did you eat? Are you hungry? Like, Mom, I just ate like an hour ago. Are you hungry? Do you want more food?
So you're Italian is what you're saying.
Pretty much. I'm like, yeah, you're too thin, son. Like, let me feed you some more. But no, it's because my mom didn't really cook or anything, and we kind of were left to our own devices when it came to that physical need being met. So now I'm like honed in, and I was like honed in on the tidiness because again, my mom, she didn't really wash clothes and things like that. So I had to do all the cleaning and stuff for my siblings. And it was like, so now I'm like, son, do you have anything to wash? Mom, you just washed today. I'm gonna wash again. Do you need clean clothes? Do you need your
You know
bed
what? Just
sheets
strip what
washed?
you're wearing, put something new on. Let me throw in the
Put it
washer
on.
for you.
Right. And I'm obsessive. Like it's crazy. And I had to like go to therapy because I'm like, I think I'm gonna mess my child up with me trying to do better than my parents. And I'm gonna screw them up some more. They're like,
You just might be a little more dependent than most. That's all.
right. And he's like, and I'm doing good with the independence thing, like, because I have just decided to set up in the cabinet, there are little cubbies that have snacks and everything for each day of the week. And he can pull it out and then make a sandwich with his little accessories for his lunch meal.
That's so cute.
It used to be little paper bags, brown paper bags in the
Gotta
fridge.
start somewhere.
Because I'm like, I do need to teach him independence because I coddle a lot because I didn't have that as a child. So now I'm over here like, come here, let me cradle you like a baby. And here, don't go up these steps. I'm gonna pick you up. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not doing that. Yeah, I tend to do that with my son too. I tend to baby him. And you know, my friends are like, you gotta stop babying him. And our kids are the same age. So
Yeah,
I'm like, but he's my baby. Like
he's my baby. He's my only baby.
my baby's like 100 pounds, but like he's my baby, you know?
My baby. Yeah, my baby is, oh my God, he's 58 inches. So that's what, 4'11"?
He's almost as tall as I am. So
He's almost tall as me. I'm like, you need to stop that. Stop that.
but it
But
just,
yeah,
it just shows, it just drives that point home that the things that we did not have, we now overly do
overly
with
do.
our children.
And we have to find balance. We do have to find balance. That's where I was going with it. Finding balance between giving your child better than what you had and becoming a crazy mom whose toddler says, I'm not in my play clothes. I can't play outside at daycare. Don't do that. That's when I realized I needed therapy. But those little, sorry. So balance. Find balance as parents, y'all. We got this. We can do this. Just break these cycles.
Again, and you know what? Like I said, and I'll bring it back again, it's important to recognize the things that hurt you as a child that your parents have done, not to villainize them, but to understand how you don't want your child to feel so that you can be a better parent for them. So with that being said, I think that sums it up for Talk It Out Tuesday. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And everybody, don't neglect how you feel. It stems in your adult life too, and to yourself, not just your children. So take care of your needs and take your meds. Have a good Tuesday. What's left of it.
Bye.